Things are going to start happening to me now.
You've done all the reading. You're a scholar. You're a professor. You've done all the reading. You've done the intellectual heavy lifting.
More or less, eat shit and die.
You wouldn't know a fact if it begged you all night long.
Want to give the wrong impression, because I am very high.
Ran up behind him with a hatchet. Smash, smash, smash.
Yeah. Care. I'm a libertarian. What I'm getting is...
Did you vote for Joe Jorgensen or Trump?
Who?
Joe Jorgensen. That was the perfect answer. Thank you. That
And welcome everybody to the Libertarian Podcast Review. No, it's not Brian Williams, but it's Tyler Yonke, and Brian's going to be on tomorrow. We had a little snafu, so I thought I'm already set up and ready to go. Clint's having on Dave Smith in a while, so why not come on here and talk about something that's been pestering me lately. All right, I hope everyone's doing good. Maybe we'll just recap what's been going on with me. I had the Kill podcast with Andy. It went off the rails. It was fantastic. I had a lot of good times. Those went well. I'm going to have, I did Clint. We talked about Penn Jillette. That was a good one as well. And I've got someone in the works. We're going to go over the new Michael Shermer. He's another libertarian stalwart who talked to Nick Gillespie. And we're going to clip and go through his show. Brian Williams is coming on tomorrow, and we are going to do a old school, it's a 2013 interview with Gavin Newsom. And on that, it's fantastic. So Brian and I are going to drink. We're going to go through that. But today I thought we'd talk about something else. This was a podcast and something I've been really thinking about trying to get into a little bit more, which is I'm an attorney. I do family law. Okay. And that's my primary thing, whether I like it or not. It's what I'm good at. It's what I do. And I thought there was, how can I help with the liberty movement? And I saw this podcast with Kyle Matovic, and he had Garbage Man Andy, my boy, on there, and then Kate Crosby, Mayor Kate, and they talked about their issues in family court. And I just thought it was really well done. It was good. They came across, but I thought there maybe could be some perspective and my point of view coming through there. And then really, I mean, they had a pointed comment at the end about like the Liberty Party and libertarians, what they can do about this. And for me personally, I'm always struggling with how can I help in this vein. I am helping my clients because the real problem is the court system. I had a go spat with what's his name? The legal man on Twitter, actually. And he was saying that, the family courts are just way against the man. He never has a chance. And I'm like, well, I just literally had a trial 2 weeks ago. The dad wasn't granted custody, and we ended up reversing everything, and he got half 50-50 with accusations that were anyway. Pauline, we did a great job. He won something, and he's like, that's one off. Well, it's not one off. And Andy actually, and we're going to go through this podcast here, he makes a point that for all the crap that the blue and the red states have, and that you may have with a blue state or a red state, if you're a liberty person, like I live here in California, for dad's rights, it may be actually to the detriment of the child at times, but they actually try to give the dad not a short shrift, and they do. What the problem you may have with some of that is they do, even still, it depends on the age of the child, but a really young child is typically bonding with mom, so they're not going to take it away from dad. They're going to be a graduated kind of custody thing. But dads, sometimes dads get custody even then, and then the moms are pissed off. I have moms that are pissed off saying, hey, I'm breastfeeding, blah, blah. I do have a client that's breastfeeding way too long, which is a little bit, legal man is cool, but he's black-pilled beyond recovery, JC says. I agree, and I would like to talk to him. Some of the stuff he totally sidebar. He was talking. I don't even going to get into that one. Anyway, yeah, you're not absolutely. You're not wrong. Okay, so we're going to start off here. This is the In Liberty and Health podcast with Andy, Kyle, and Kate. So let's just kind of give you an idea of what they're talking about here, and if anybody has problems with hearing or any of this, I hope you let me know. take it away.
One in specific, but just to kind of give a layout of what I kind of think, and then we can kind of go from here.
I want names.
my grandfather was divorced 3 times, and some of it was, I'm sure, his fault to a degree. And my dad's been married once. My mom and dad were never married, but they split up when I was relatively young. And I listened to a lot of guys in the manosphere, right? The red pill world, not like the politically red pill, but more like the dating relationship kind of red pill stuff. So it kind of gave me a perspective on marriage that perhaps isn't good, in family court, obviously. And the one quote that I always go back to is that a divorce and alimony always seems to be being drugged behind a truck on fire, and it only stops when she says it stops. So now I'm kind of glad that Kate's here because she can kind of give her perspective on things. But it definitely seems like there's a female bias, and not that I necessarily know that there is, but from everything that I've learned and seen and kind of read into, that kind of seems to be the lay of the land. But I guess let's start with Andy first. What's your kind of history with family court? And I guess kind of detail your experience with it.
Well, I've got a 5-year-old daughter. Her mom got pregnant, and it was kind of just like a fling kind of deal. And how much time we got? But no, she got pregnant. We tried to have an abortion. Thank God it didn't work. I went with her to the baby killing factory, and we split the cost of the expensive pill, and I watched her take it, and I'm so glad it didn't work. So let me preface with that. But throughout that process of her being pregnant, we ended up getting together, and I took a job working as a garbage man, got my CDL, and was like trying to do everything right, got us a place to live, a 2-bedroom duplex and stuff. She signed the lease and then never moved in. She took off, left the state with our daughter when she was 6 months old. I didn't know what my options were as far as like custodial rights or anything like that, but I wanted to see my daughter. I wanted to be a part of my daughter's life. You know, that is like my biggest fear, is having a kid growing up not knowing who I am if it's my kid. I went to the court there. It was like a long drawn out 1.5-year process. They pretty much, judge told me, there was one point in the courtroom where he said, we're not hearing your case today, even though we subpoenaed all your character witnesses, because we got all these other people in this courtroom. So figure it out. And they slapped me with $800 a month in child support and said, if you want to see your daughter, you're going to have to buy plane tickets each month on top of that. And that eventually got old, and I took everything I had and sold what I could and put all my shit in a U-Haul and came down here to Texas. So I've been here almost 3 years, maybe 3 years. So
my God,
so that's kind of my experience with the family court.
So I guess, and I don't want Kate to think that we're hammering women here, because I'm sure that she has a lot to probably fire back about. But so has your experience kind of been that the court seemed to favor the mother more than the father?
I mean, yeah, but I've done some research on this. It tends to be, surprisingly enough, blue states actually do better about joint custody, at least from birth. Part of my situation, and baby mama and I get along fine now. We try to do the co-parent thing as best we can, and it's gotten better over time. Mm-hmm. But my experience with it was, since I was never married and I didn't have anything filed with the court already, they pretty much said she could leave the state with her if she wants. She's got full custodial rights. Mm-hmm. So as it stands right now in Texas, it's probably not the greatest idea, but thankfully I don't have anything in the court system, but I get to see my daughter every weekend, and we just kind of have a mutual agreement, and that kind of works out. But, there is still a looming fear over my head. If something was to happen, if she would have picked up and leave the state again, I would be right back at square one. So.
Okay. I thought I'd let Andy rant a little bit there to begin with. Gives us a good idea of his setup. Now, what I'm going to say about all these people, this is people, including my buddy Andy, I believe them completely. When I take clients in, you often hear all kinds of stories. And so what I have to do is see everything that's been filed in the court. Sometimes people don't understand. Sometimes that, and it could be this, even I have had this, where you're going in there and you think you hear the judge right, or your client's talking, you're trying to hear, maybe you didn't hear exactly why everything happened. Sometimes things are very technical, so they happen and they give a ruling, and you think it's bad for whatever reason. They didn't hear my argument, but maybe it's a technical a statute of some sort that wasn't upheld, or you didn't follow the rules on something. So that could be. So I'm not going to dismiss any of the people, Kate or Andy, for what they're actually stating is happening here. So that's completely fine. Andy's completely correct about the red state, blue state stuff. What I would also say there's a thing called the UCCJEA. It's a standardized throughout all the states. So if you file in one state, the next state, and you file there, they're supposed to have cross communication between judges. It does. I'm dismissed, says Andy. You shall be. So anyway, there's help between states like this. No, so Andy, I would just say for his circumstance, I don't know all the details. I'd have to look specifically. If she just picks up and moves, and neither party filed, yeah, that's a tough one. Let's take you off the screen though. That is a tough one. Okay. But like here in California, there's even, the idea is you start out, you're going to have 50-50 custody. Then they work their way off of it on all kinds of bases. Mom's on drugs, dad's a male prostitute maybe, or whatever it is. So they start out with that, where I don't think that's the case with other states. And it depends on the age. If you have a newborn, which it sounds like it was pretty close to it here for Andy, there is going to be a bonding. So that most of the states and most of the studies say, it's bonding with, it's typically mom. You're going to breastfeed, your other thing. It's just going to happen. Dads may not have overnights to begin with. The situation I have more, because I understand that. So it's going to be graduated for the dad. What I have more of a problem with is when the courts jump in and you have a dad of like 15 years. He's had multiple kids, maybe with the same, they've been married. I just had this. They were married for 20 years. He had two adult children, a 7-year-old. And now they're saying, well, maybe dad shouldn't have custody. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. He's been the dad in this kids' lives. He's raised other children. There's no reason why he shouldn't have. And by the way, we won in trial on that. So that's also another thing in there. Witnesses and time in court I had put in there. So I don't know, it's typically how we have them here, at least in California. And I've got to preface everything from my own jurisdiction, which is you go in, you have what's called a short cause hearing, and you may or may not have witnesses, but hearsay comes in, all kinds of other crap. And if it doesn't work out and you want to request a trial, a long cause on that, you can do so. So I don't know if that's what happened, Andy, in your case. I'm just kind of going over that. Okay, let's set up the next one. These guys, they all give such really good comments here. So let's get Kate's point of view on this now. It's about 6 minutes in on the podcast.
So, Kate, what has been your experience with a family court? Because you were the one that kind of pitched this idea to me. So I'm really interested in hearing your thoughts surrounding what you've been through and, just kind of your experience with the courts.
Yeah, well, I thought it would be a great idea because I heard Andy on the Libertarian podcast review mentioning,
all right, so we do have to, she gave a shout out. So thank you. Andy is kind of somewhat of a co-host on here at times with the Kill podcast stuff, and he didn't even acknowledge that. He just let it go over as if it's nothing. Look, his eyes even closed on this situation. Despicable.
Family court, and it's really a story I've heard from too many people. Like, that was my whole big thing when I got into the Libertarian Party, is like the Libertarian Party was the party that seemed to be like the only one about parental rights and like people being able to raise their children. But my experience with family court has been horrendous, horrible. But I do understand Andy's point too. Most of the time there is a bias towards women. In my situation, I feel like the court just like looks for the most like traumatizing way, like to affect the children rather than the best interest. It's like, how can we traumatize these kids the worst? Make sure that, we get as much money as we can from whoever. And then, they just sit back and profit off it. And they like these high conflict cases because, well, then you just keep coming back and keep filing through the court system. Like they have no incentive to give me my child back when they know I'm just going to keep filing and paying all this money to the state.
I do have to just jump in here. The thing that I'm not quite with on that. So the judges, as an example, they just get paid. They're elected officials. I am thoroughly shamed. It says garbage man. Yes. They just get paid and they get a salary. So for whatever, Andy, do you want to come on? Andy, let me know. If you want to come and join me, you can do so. I'll send you a link. But they just get paid from the state. So it doesn't really matter what is happening with them, the garnering fees or whatnot. I haven't found that that's necessarily the case. Andy, I'm sending you a link if you want to join. If you don't want to, no big deal. Anyway, let's keep going.
In order to fight for him. So I've been fighting for over 7 years now for my 11-year-old son. Like we talked about on the last episode I was on, I did have a stint in jail, so obviously while I was incarcerated, my son went to live with his grandparents. And the incident where I ended up being incarcerated happened the night of his father's funeral. So that's why he didn't go to live with his dad because his dad was already deceased. And at least in my state,
By the way, that's a rough story.
Even when one parent is deceased, that opens up like a whole bunch of grandparents' rights. So that was how they kind of came in. But a lot of what happened like doesn't make sense, doesn't seem like it's legal, definitely seems unconstitutional. But like they filed through a county that neither of us lived in, you know, like weird things like that. Like the child wasn't a resident of the county, yet somehow this judge signed this order. And like Andy was saying, like I've gone into court several times and the judge just flat out says, we're not having a trial today. Both lawyers in the chambers, decision is just made. And that's the biggest problem, is that it's like this huge decision is made by one person, like the judge. There's no jury, there's no, you know, anybody else deciding or looking over the evidence. And a lot of the times it doesn't even take evidence. It's hearsay. It's, you know, somebody put on an affidavit all of these allegations, never had to prove a single thing, and the judge just, you know, decides whatever way he wants, and there's no repercussions because they all have all the immunity in the world. So yeah, I mean, and I'm currently in custody litigation right now for the fifth time, I think. It's maybe sixth time. I've hired like 4 different lawyers. You know, like Andy was saying, you sell everything that you can to just keep fighting this. Like it's ridiculous. Like what the court will like put you through, and my child as well. Like he's drug into this. He's brought into, you know, talking to judges' chambers or whatever, and it's like.
Okay, well, got a lot of questions and things to talk about there. Okay, money for the courts, is that true or not true? I don't see it that way. And so it could feel that way, the perception. But for us, I mean, you know, look, I even have judges necessarily that they'll do a continuance. They'll say, we'll have you back, not necessarily a continuance, but a return. So a return date, they'll set those. Sometimes they set them a bunch, and I'm sure they are probably told by the clerks, hey, you know, let's get a filing. But if you don't have money, as an example, for here in California, you could do a fee waiver. It's based on your income. Even then, filing fees, you're talking like $60, $80. It's not, and the response on them is 0. So, and if someone files that through what's called the domestic violence restraining order process, there's no filing fees. So I don't feel that the filing fees are the exorbitant part, or that the court's really raking them in. Now, in general, and you have a big courthouse, they're bringing it in with that a little bit. So it's not completely out of bounds, but I don't think with the judges, they don't get paid per case, as an example. Grandparents' rights. So you're married. This is a point for being married. You're married, you and your spouse, you agree, you don't want grandma and grandpa around. There's nothing they can do about it. Okay. So, let's say we got some things. Andy says, I just got to listen. I want to hear you criticize without me there. Don't sugarcoat it. Never would. Shannon says, what I like about Tyler is he doesn't sugarcoat anything. He says it how it is. That's bullshit, Shannon. JC said it's a libertarian autism. And Kyle says, hey, Kyle, by the way, I listened to your podcast today with Sal. Loved it. I actually got a reply from Sal because I had to reach out to him too. He said, let's do it. And then his email from his business manager, whatever, said, no, thanks. So maybe they took a look at my, Twitter page. Either way, doesn't matter. I did like your podcast review. We're getting derailed, so let's get back to this. Okay, grandparents' rights. Yes, you split up. How we have it here in California is if one grandparent, one of the parents, you're split up, you're getting divorced, and neither party wants the grandparents involved. The grandparents are going to have a tough time getting through. They've got to have much more of an obstacle to get over that. I've had grandparents insert themselves in, either, you know, petitioning for them with the parents are crap, or in the other sense where the grandparents are kind of crap and they're asserting their rights in there. The court is always going to, she talked about constitutional, she's completely right. You have a First Amendment right as a parent, a fundamental right with your children to be able to raise them how you want. That is always, at least here in this crappy state of California, which actually is not so bad, some of this stuff, you do have that. So the grandparents are more like visitors. They usually get visitation. It's much more just delineated down. So it sucks what she's having going on. And by the way, typically something happens. I've had drug offending fathers and mothers who get themselves clean. You know, every 6 months they can come back and refile. And so I always say, do X, Y, and Z. You're going to get yourself back in there. I'm sure she's doing that. Maybe she just lives in a sucky state. So that does suck. And then one of the other things, she's talking about a bench trial versus jury, that you just have a judge making decisions. I personally like that for many reasons. You're not playing to the sympathies of the jury. Although I had a trial about a month ago, and this is the first time I've said, I wish I had a jury trial because I just didn't feel like I got a good outcome. Now, what the benefit for an attorney like myself having a jury trial or not having a jury trial, just having a bench trial is when you're walking through, someone's on the witness stand or you're talking about some things and you have a jury, you've got to walk them from point A to point B so that jury understands what's going on. The judge doesn't need all that explanation. He's got the rules. He's better than you. So you can skip a lot of that stuff and go right for the gullet. I don't know, the throat on some of this, and basically have, for me, I enjoy that better. I think you sometimes get a better judgment out of it, but she says otherwise, and I get it. So another thing I talked about here was she mentioned about hearsay and all these other things coming through. Look, the standard that you have, what's called a short cause hearing, you come in, you file you get into court 15 minutes or so. That judge is going to hear anything that might be relevant, hearsay as well, but you push it to a trial, and it's a completely different story. So that might be some of the things there. I don't know what her attorneys are doing. I feel bad for Kate. She seems like a really nice lady. She makes the comments here that she has children, other children now, and she's still not really able to kind of get over that. Okay, let's go to the next one here. This is a Quartz Motive. This is what I've titled it as. I'm getting out of breath talking here. Quartz Motive. Got Kyle, Andy, and Kate.
It's so malevolent because you hear about people using their kids as a weapon against the other parent, but I don't think you hear people talk about enough is that courts literally use children essentially as a weapon because they know that you guys want your kids, you want access to your children. I mean, you know, if you're a parent, of course, that's what you want. So they're going to do anything they can to extend and draw the case out as long as possible. So that way they can keep getting a paycheck because, you know, if there's no boogeyman, then nobody gets paid. Andy, has that kind of been a similar experience for you that they'll?
No, so I'm just going to pipe in here. So Kyle, once again, I don't believe that's the case. Once again, those are just government workers. They don't really care what papers are coming across their desk. Matter of fact, I've had, maybe I'll just talk about this real quick. By the way, I did have Kyle is correct. I don't believe so, Shannon. Just kidding. I've had judges yell at parents for, as a matter of fact, we can file motions here and get sanctions for people who are constantly litigating. Okay. So, and I've had judges do it where the parents can't get along. I have judges yell at parents. By the way, there was a Libertarian judge here. He's no longer in the court. I had him yelling at parties once. There was two parents. They're yelling. They're having problems. One of their children had died. Okay, get this. They had a teenager that had died. They're fighting and complaining over the other one. He literally says to them in court, this is not my case. I'm waiting for my case to come up. He says to them in court, he's like, you know, the only fortunate person in this whole family is the dead child. I swear to God, that's what he said, because they don't have to go through the crap that you two are doing. And I don't want, so you do have judges that just get tired of seeing the same shit over and over and over. And I think that builds up to the point of not wanting to create money for the court. So, anyway, Shannon says Kyle is correct. The sentiment of what he's saying is correct. Shannon, don't go woke on me. Okay, let's keep going.
We'll kind of drag it out forever and ever.
Yeah, I mean, I did not go through it nearly as long as you've gone through it, Kate. So I can't speak to it. To that level, but definitely. But they're
Shannon. It has nothing to do with the law degree. I have my man card.
Almost seems to be. It's like a level of bureaucracy, right? Where this is what's happening. They won't ever admit to it because they're saying, you know, this is the bureaucratic process we have to go through. And, you know, there's revolving doors of judges and lawyers and things like that. When I first got my first legal consultation, my lawyer straight up told me, she's like, no one wins in this except for me and the judge. Like, I get that you want to see your kid, but the people who win in this are lawyers and judges. It ain't the kids and it ain't going to be you or her.
Not wrong, Andy. Although I'll tell you, as a family law attorney, it turns my stomach. I can't help but be somewhat invested, right? Because you feel for some of these people, or I've had other ones where I'm just like, you are complete dumbasses, and I don't know what I'm doing this for. But I'm not. Even though I had a girlfriend once say I was a tin man, I'm not. Okay, so I'm not. I am, but I'm not. I was going to use my women card and chose not to. I don't think you have a choice. Just saying. I don't think you have a choice. You either use it or you don't, and sometimes you can't help it. It just exudes. And a woman is always flashing something, usually her card, her purse, or something else. Okay, back to this. Let's go. I don't even remember what I was saying, so let's not talk about that. Child support Oh yes, I win. I do win. That's what I'm saying. And family law judges and the attorneys do win. I can't help but be involved somewhat. And I had a traffic case several years ago, and my law partner, he had done traffic stuff, so he went in there. The cop, as you might imagine, was completely lying, and the judge is always going to believe the police officer, so we don't get a judgment. And I'm just frustrated. I'm like hand motions and rolling my eyes and everything I tell my clients not to do. For me, though, it was a great learning experience. One, cops lie. Two, it was good for me to see how it is from the client's perspective of the emotion and everything like that. So the benefit of being an attorney, as an example, is you're not so emotionally invested. Sometimes it's very hard to make arguments when the issue is all and you're feeling it inside. So it's good to have a good attorney in these cases. That's kind of my suggestion for people if they can afford it. It might be crappy. And so then if we're just going to talk about, and you're going to have to go out there and get an attorney, my suggestion is you go and you talk to that person. I tell my clients, potential, consults all the time, like, look, this is very personal information you're going to have to share with your attorney. You're going to have to feel comfortable with them. One, there's got to be a competency issue that you feel good about that. But two, you've got to feel comfortable with the person. And if you don't, you can talk to them and tell them about your feelings and the strategies and everything else you have going in mind. It might not be the connection for you. So if I don't connect, that could be a problem. But I always do. I'm doing fine. Okay, let's go to the next one here. Child support and the ramifications. Andy, second on
against child support. But if you enter this kind of agreement and then you kind of back out, it does seem like the recourse is pretty like gray. But at the same time, I've also heard stories of people going to jail and then they're just completely stuck in the hole over child support. I don't know if you guys know anything more perhaps on that kind of line.
Come on, Andy, stop using.
And I'll let you take it.
The mute button. Oh.
Well, I think my issue with child support is I think it should be like a voluntary agreement amongst two parents rather than having the state come in, because the state's solution to a lot of this is, oh, they're not paying child support. Well, I'm gonna take that person's driver's license. I'm gonna put them in jail. And it's like, okay, well now they definitely can't pay their child support if they're not able to get to work and they're locked in a cage. So it's like it doesn't make any sense the way the state thinks it should be handled. And then another thing is it's a racket. So the court only wants as much child support as possible to be paid because they make money off of that.
Okay, well, I'm going to pause real quick right here to make a few comments so I don't miss. Peanut says, Spud, hey, you guys take it offline if you can. No, I'm just kidding. So DCSS, Department in California. And by the way, I'm always prefacing this. This is the way it is in my state. I know a lot of states mirror how this is going on. They're going to talk about CPS and CYS, some other, we call it CPS here, Child Protective Services, but there's Department of Child Support Services here in California. What that is they will help collect child support and spousal support, if that's possible, for your case. Now, you have a case in court. The wife or the husband, one of them is collecting child support. They can file a case with Department of Child Support Services, and they will act on their behalf. They're not anything but, in that case, a collection service for child support and spousal support. I recommend that oftentimes because they'll do a full audit. They're pretty good on that. They're not defending either case. They'll run the numbers for you, and it's pretty solid. Now, if you are on public assistance, DCSS comes in automatically and they take over because the county wants their money from you. You are sucking off the teat of the government and you're collecting welfare or some sort of benefits. The county is like, we're going to get reimbursed, and we're going to get reimbursed from the party that's paying, that's paying support. Now, she's going to mention here about, Title 41. And I think that's their state. Doesn't matter. They do get government funding and there's some things there, but it's mostly under that title that they collect for the benefits. So they may not get every dollar. Like as an example, let's say the wife, or just use her, she's getting $100 a month in child support and she's on welfare, public assistance. So DCSS opens a case, they're collecting. She's not going to get $100 every month. She's going to get less than that because she's already got her money from the state or the county. So the county is going to collect out of there. They're just basically paying back there. Now, that DCSS and that process that she's talking about is only happening, the state is getting, or the county is getting some money back if they're on public assistance, once again, only in California. And I believe that's the way these federal titles are. So if they're just using this, the court system to collect, it's not going through DCSS, or maybe it is going through them, or you're paying directly. The court is not making money off of support. She's not wrong, but she's not totally correct. So there's a distinction there. So the motive that we're talking about here, and I'm not defending courts, I'm just trying to make it clear so that we're all understanding what that situation is. Okay, but should child support be ordered in the first place? I will say she's also got a point here. They can take your driver's license away if, once again, you're through the Department of Child Support Services. That's one of the things they do. It's horrendous because then you can't get to work. They can also put a lien and a levy on your bank accounts and just suck some. That's the only way we get it from the deadbeat that owes my wife a little bit of money because he does a cash job. So we don't really give a shit, but that's just the way it is. So that's a process. But you do have deadbeats in this case. So, you know, I don't know what you do about
Federal,
that.
like tax money. So like they get a federal fund match. It's like Title 40 funding, 66 cents on the dollar. And Pennsylvania is like one of the like highest collectors of child support. Like, so we get, you know, the more the state collects, the more they get from federal tax money to match that. And it's like, of course they have this incentive to like, you know, rake parents over the coals to pay for it, which I'm not saying that people shouldn't, you know, take care of their children or help if they need to. But at the same time, like one of the factors that goes into like deciding who gets custody is like who, you know, is better suited to financially support the child and stuff like that. So I think we need to go more of like a 50-50 approach where no one's paying child support and you're each seeing the child, you know, the same amount. So I think that would alleviate a lot more issues than what child support causes.
Mm-hmm. So, oh, Andy, do you have something to add?
Well, I was going to say the way the child support system is set up is in a lot of places, it's not based on out-of-pocket costs. It's based on if your wages are up here and the other person's wages are down here, they try to equalize them. It's not really based on like what it would actually cost to raise a child. It's like the cost of adding a room or adding a car note instead of like buying a car seat or redecorating a room you already have to be a kid's room. So, and it really forces the parents into more conflict where you're concerned about how much money the other person is making when the focus should be on, you know, doing the best job for your kid.
Okay, Andy is not wrong, but he's wrong. And here's what we're going to say about that, which is, at least California, once again, talking about here, the calculation is just it's a thing that this legislature's come up with. They've done it, and you go off of each party's gross income. Andy's complaining, and I've talked to Andy about this, complaining that they're not using and people say this to me all the time, but look at all these expenses. You draft this income and expense form, you list all your expenses on there. I can't, with my living expenses, I cannot afford to pay child support. That's the argument. Court doesn't give a shit. They have some random things like your health insurance, union dues, and some other things that they'll take off there. It takes into your account your tax consequences. If you have support that you owe to another baby mama, it'll take that into account. It's a little bit of a benefit. Maybe you have a house, those kind of things. The reason you can't take into the extent of your debt that you have, your living expenses, is there's irresponsible people out there. If you come in, I have parties that come in, they're like, you know, not making much, but their car payment's like $600 a month because they got this brand new Ford pickup. Okay, so he's not going to pay or she's not going to pay support because I've got a high ticket item that I'm paying for every month. Sorry, that to me does not work. And Andy is completely correct that it pits parents against each other for this kind of thing. People all the time, hey, should I just not work? Now, we have all kinds of things we could talk about of you have a right, you have an obligation to take care of your kid. You can't just not take care of them and not work and quit your job. That can be problematic, and that's a technical issue we would talk about. So Andy's completely correct. And I always tell people, I'm like, you know what? It's better off furthering yourself in life and continuing to work, even if that extra $2 an hour raise or whatever it is going to cause X dollars in support, because you're going to be better off as a person for doing good work, I think, in the long run. Let's see if we have any other questions here. You should interview David Day. He's a lawyer who sponsors the Biting the Bullet podcast. Okay. Tell me more about this guy. Shannon, give me some input. Tay Tyler, how often do you see DMIs issued against dads, and how often is it warranted in your opinion? What's a DMI? Is that like a domestic violence restraining order? If so, or tell me what a DMI stands for in your case, and I will be glad, Shannon, to answer that question. Okay, well, let's see if they have any. So deadbeats, my stepkid's dad, as an example, total deadbeat. He probably owes thousands of dollars now. When we first got married, it was like $120. It's no big deal, but they've never seen them. If any money pops in there, he got a COVID return, and all of a sudden we see it from the popped into my wife's bank account because DCSS just stole it from him, and it made me laugh. I'm like, you little dumb fucker. Hadn't done anything in years. Okay, so what else do we have here? Scenario is for cases only. Okay, that calculation takes into gross, not net spendable. We talked about that as well. Okay. This next one is, I talked about ex parte conversations. So ex parte conversations, they talk about here about talking in judges' chambers only. That's what you call ex parte. We'll just go over and see what they say here. And by the way, Kyle, if you're still in here, you did a great job. I thought your interview was great. I appreciated all of you. All of you made me think in part of this. So that's what I appreciated about it, because my clients don't always make me think.
Judges and lawyers kind of meeting behind closed doors in some of these court cases. And it seems like some of the judges have strong inherent biases against certain people in certain cases.
Meredith, I literally asked you and you said, I'm in trial. I can't do this. And then this morning you're talking about fucking a judge. I don't know what's going on. Okay. We're still going to do our thing. Meredith is a family law attorney here in California. Patrick is an attorney in Minnesota, I want to say, and Liberty Weekly. And he's also done some family law stuff. So we are still going to do a podcast. We could talk about any of these kind of things. I just thought this was, I was supposed to have Brian McWilliams on tonight, and he had a family.
Andy, I guess I'll let you go first. Did it feel like you were getting pressed that way? It kind of seemed like what you were alluding to earlier when they kind of told you, like, you're fucked out of the gate. It seemed like you kind of felt that way.
Well, my lawyer was actually like very aggressive, which I'm thankful for. Mm-hmm. But
I keep wanting to, when he says my lawyer was very aggressive and he says she, it makes me think of some like big behemoth. I don't know. I don't know why. Or maybe a teeny little lady. I don't know.
In my personal case, I didn't experience that bias other than what was like the legal bias that already existed. But I have heard of, such and such family member is a judge or connected to the court system, and so they get favor. But also like the lawyers and judges can step down from family court and go right into family law and be, it's like a revolving door. They can work for a practice and be off the bench and be on the bench, like back and forth. So their interests don't really align with the child's or the parents.
Kate?
When I think too, you add in like guardian ad litems and stuff where that's like a lawyer that's so.
I should probably comment on that real quick. Yeah, judges can move off the bench, go into family law. I had one here recently. She was actually a really good a judge. I appreciated her a lot. She's pro man. Okay, so you get some of those. Sometimes you get women who are just very pro men in their courtroom. I don't know if they're lesbian or what happens. They hate the women. That doesn't make sense. I don't know what it is, but that's kind of the way it is. Anyway, she had been in family law practice, so there was a notice. Hey, if you've ever had a case with her or her firm, she's going to recuse, and they'll just send you to a different department. What did I do, Meredith? I don't know. Oh, you're talking to those guys. Meredith literally said this morning, fucking judge this morning, man. And I just replied, is that allowed? That seems like an ethical problem. So anyway, you could keep complaining that nothing happened. Okay, let's keep going.
Supposed to be representing the child, but that rarely ends up being the case. So, and like the court picks that lawyer, but then like the parents have to pay for that lawyer.
Okay, she's talking about guardian ad litem. It's someone who can't represent themselves, often with a minor. Here in California, we call it minors counsel. Same idea. The court does appoint them. They're on a panel. They get a minors counsel, and that person is supposed to be for the kids. So what ends up happening is that person, who whatever they pretty much say is going to end up going. So you can have your client, the other party, and then that minors counsel tends to make everything one way or another. And we only do those here, at least in high conflict cases, issues that you just have to petition the court, or the court's going to assign it themselves for cases that just can't get resolved.
So it's like you have no say in what lawyer gets selected for your child. So it's whatever the judge decides. And you don't, there's so many cases and stories that you'll hear of, like all of these very corrupt guardian ad litem judges who are like having these back end deals, we're like, oh, well, I'll send this person your way if you give me this. And then we just keep passing these children around and requiring them to go to more and more, court ordered things that are making their friends money. And I'm sure they're getting a cut, there's so many cases of that. And like, it's been exposed, and yet still nothing seems to happen though. Because like I said before, like they have even more immunity than cops do. So it's like, what do you do? Like, are you going to file a complaint against the judge or the lawyer? So then now you're just really screwed the next time you go to court, like, because now they all know, they're all friends, and they're like, oh, well, she'll write bad reviews about you. Like, we'll just take your kid. Like, they think it's nothing.
Okay. A few items there that may or may not come into play on this one, which is talked about the small town. Maybe it's small town courts. I have a few that I do, like 4 counties that I'm really in. One is small, 2 are decent, and 1 is pretty big. And I don't really find those problems of backroom deals. Like one courthouse has like 6, 7, 8 different judges. So you're in different courtrooms all the time. It's not really the case for there. Minors council, we talked about that. Small town. Yeah. See, my cousin Vinny, small town courts can really suck as far as how that goes. Other than that though, I don't want to impose nefarious dealings onto judges necessarily. Okay. You can just have, Michael Malice talks about this with Trump. Don't assign to malice what is just incompetence. That can be the case. You can have really incompetent judges. And then, some of those small town ones, maybe there are, you have that counsel that's in there all the time. The judge is buddies with them and thinks that whatever, all you could do about that is get it. By the way, this is then my suggestion for small town courts. And I say this all the time. I get someone coming in, they go, someone referred you. I really want you to do my case. I'm like, what county is it? That's always my first question. They tell me, I'm like, I'm not in that county. Tell you what, find an attorney in that county. That is your best bet, is to get a local in that county, a small county. You're going to have someone, and these are little ideas I'm trying to push out to people. Get someone in that county that can help you. Says you don't want some stranger coming in, big city folk. Okay, Kyle says, I'm a little behind, but thank you. We'll have to set something up. Oh yeah, sure, I'd love to. No habla inglés. Okay, that's why you're not here, Meredith. You're speaking Spanish, and we can't have that. Okay, let's go then. Let's see, this next one I had it as topic. They also mentioned ex parte. So talking about, let's go here. Conversation like, hey, sometimes attorneys are just talking to judges in the back. Yes, that happens. Now, if you weren't represented, would the judge do that? No, he would either talk to you and the opposing counsel. But that happens sometimes. Typically, that's only going to happen when they set us for trial. The judge comes back and says, what can we do to settle this, to get this so we don't have to have litigation? That's always the plan. Most of the judges I work with, they would prefer you to work something out and not be back in their courtrooms. So I have good feelings about that. There are some judges that just suck. But anyway, that's what kind of ex parte means. It can mean a few things. One, it could be just back in judges' chambers, or it can also mean that you're doing it without the other party involved. Okay.
Sorry to interrupt, but can you guys elaborate what going to mediation is? I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that term.
Do you want me to go? Or? Okay, so like whenever you file for custody or whatever, like there's like a.
Okay, Kyle mentions Pat is Wisconsin. Pat's such a good dude. True. On both counts, and Meredith says she saw him in Vegas and Freedom Fest. I noticed him in a picture with Reed, and he's tall, much taller than he appeared on the podcast when I did with him.
All these steps and all these processes you have to go through before you get in front of the judge, before you take it to trial. So first, you file your paperwork saying, I want this, this, and this. And then they will say, okay, well, you're going to go to mediation in front of this other lawyer. And so you'll go in front of that lawyer and you'll just sit, you, the other party, parent, whatever, and then that lawyer, and they'll try and come to an agreement without having to.
Andy says, my judge wore a yarmulke. Is your eternal judge going to wear a yarmulke? That's the real question. Meredith says, Patrick is 6'3", and he's handsome. Thank you for the stick on topic, people.
Take it to trial. So you do that twice usually, and then you go in front of the judge for like another mediation in front of the judge where they're like, are you sure that you can't come to an agreement? And this, so this whole process, this takes months and months and months, if not years. In my case, like I filed, and then it's like, okay, you'll get your first mediation, and maybe 3-4 months down the road, then you go to that one, and then it's another 4 months till the next one, and then it's another 4 months until the next one, and then it's another however many months until you finally get in front of the judge. And it's such a waste of time, a waste of money too, because you're paying your lawyer to show up to all of these things that are going to be 5 minutes, and you're not going to get anything done, and it's just so pointless. And there's no way to like skip that. Like, in criminal court you can like waive your preliminary hearing or whatever. Like, you can't waive anything in family court. You just have to keep going through this every single time. So
yeah, if you waive a mediation, you're very likely not going to get any custodial rights. And speaking to the process of how long it takes, if you don't have custody, and in my case, my daughter was out of state, and so you're going through this whole time with your heart kind of ripped out of your chest, like wondering what's going on with your kid, what's happening. Sometimes there's limited to no communication with your kid, and that can be psychologically just tough to deal with. And trying to go forward and like stay focused and not let it wear you down is tough too.
Okay, so a few things there, and I'm going to get back to Shannon's question about DUI or DVROs or domestic what'd you call it, something injunction. Okay, so because Andy reminds me here, first of all, mediation, the court, it's ordered, you go to a mediation, it's someone in our state, attorneys are involved, the parties go in there, you can do some input. You can also petition the court to do what's called private mediation, which you pay like $5,000 for or less. And someone else takes into account, they do a bunch of reviews, they talk to all the parties, they take everything into account, and then they give an evaluation. So yes, those people are making money. And sometimes as libertarians, we should say the private sector can do it. So you get these private mediators, and at least in my counties, that is a possible solution. And for me, if I have a case where I'm like, I've got a really good client and these kids are going to talk and you need more time with this person, that is the way I try to push it, because more likely than not, you're going to get a good outcome. Whereas otherwise they talk about mediation, they go in between for these social workers and they try to make a decision after an hour and whatever. Okay. So domestic violence restraining orders, Shannon says, do those get issued to men more than women? Maybe. I think that they just get handed out like candy. And we can talk about this whole problem, which is due process. The process here for a restraining order is one party drafts a petition. They make all the claims. They file it with the court. The party, the other party is never notified. They send it into the court. The court then, you have a judge that just reads over on the pleadings. This is truly ex parte. Solely without any other input, and they make a determination immediately as to whether this restraining order should be against the other party or not, without them ever being able to do anything. Then they say they grant it. They're going to do that on the safety of the kids, right, or whatever the reason. Anyway, they're almost always granted, and then you have a court hearing, soon thereafter, and they're supposed to have some sort of resolution within 21 days, or you waive time and trial, blah, blah, blah. They are handed out to everybody way too easily. The standard on those can be anywhere from I beat the shit out of my girlfriend to disturbing the peace of the other party. And I'm not a fan, because you are instantly put, and I know Meredith may disagree with me on this, but these people are then presumed guilty right away with this standard without them ever being able to respond. They are then presumed guilty. We just had a guy, it took him, it was in November of last year. We just had a trial this last month on it. Finally, the whole time he's not able to see his kids because came into the court, the case a little bit later after you had an attorney. So Andy talks about your child's away from you. You're stressed out. You don't know how to. Now, think of that, Andy, but the difference is you're not allowed to contact mom or the kids. Now, I had a guy, he had 9, 10, and like 12-year-old kids. He's been in their life since day one. Mom files some crappy allegations against him. He is a little dense, not the brightest. He then can't stop contacting mom to try to talk to the kids. Well, there's a restraining order. So by the time you get to court, you're not even litigating the underlying issue of did he rape mom? Yes, that was actually one of them. Did he rape mom? Which it wasn't. And all these other, one of the things she also said was he threatened to kill her. And her proof for that was on their very first date, she didn't have good cell sex connection. He said, "Oh, I'm just taking out in the force to kill you." That was date one, which she laughed about, but then still says it's a violent act, or he's still going to kill her. That's bullshit. but the problem is he's violated these orders over and over and over because he wants to see his kids. He has to see his kids, but he can't. So these are problems you have. So he's presumed guilty. Then by the time you get to court, he is guilty because one, he's kind of a dumbass. Okay, 23 minutes in. We're moving along here. This is wise. What I call
well, and then
wise.
they'll use that
government
against you in court too. Like, oh, you're emotional. You must have some mental disorder or something. And it's like, well, yeah, like you took my kid from me. I am going to be emotional about that. Like, it's like they can't put themselves in like the shoes of the parent. Like, okay, judge, how would you feel? You know, like you expect me to just sit here like stone faced with no reaction while people like slander and lie about me or something, you know, and you rip my child away from me and just expect me, oh, we'll just sit tight and wait. And eventually, you know, the government will decide when you get to see your children. And I have other, like, well, I have another child and I'm, you know, pregnant with my third child right now. And it's like, wait a minute. So I can have a 2-year-old, but my 11-year-old can't, you know, come live with me because why? Like it.
Okay. 1, 3 kids, solid work. 2, I tell this to my clients all the time when they're complaining. I'm like, hey, sorry, you've got the government involved in your case now. You're going to have to live with the consequences. But what is the solution? You're not going to get divorced. I mean, the real solution is to get the government out of marriage licenses. We can talk about that. It's miscegenation. It started due to not wanting to have mixed races married. So that's the problem there. Let's see which one this is. This is, we just talked about mediation, government. This one I call Wise Andy. And that's maybe the first time I call Andy Wise, but here you go.
Yeah. And I mean, there is parts of it that can be useful. Like if you're working on like a parenting schedule or something like that, and that's something you want to do, I'd say it's better to settle in mediation than it is to go to trial, because that puts your kids through a lot and it puts you through a lot. So, I mean, it has its pros and cons, but it's state mandated. So, you know, you're sitting there with tensions high, your emotions are high, and you're trying to work through a mediation with people who don't give a shit about you or your kids.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I feel like that's the worst part. It's like, you know, these people just don't care at all. They just like look at you like dollar bill signs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's truly bizarre to think about, because it should be a process where, if you're in a situation like that, clearly nobody's happy, right? So especially like penalizing people for being emotional, well, fuck yeah, people are gonna be pissed off. You're trying to fucking rip their kids away. Like, this is what we're designed to do. We're designed to have kids and then raise kids, and then you're wondering why people are pissed off when you're telling them, well, you may not see your kids if you keep acting like this. Like,
you know, that's a really good point, but it's also why, and maybe this is my goal of what I have to do here, is educate people. So what I have clients coming in, we go through, because they're going to go to mediation. I go through with them how this is going to work out. Okay. One thing they never do is just constantly blame the other person. That's not going to work. Take ownership if it's an issue you have. Learn to control your emotions. Worst you can actually have is someone who's in there that's been blamed for can't control themselves, and then they can't control themselves. Okay, that's not going to go well at all. Andy says, I'm right again. I don't know if that's what we write about. Anyway, yes, you got to learn to control yourself. I coach and tell them how to take care of these problems so that they are going to be hopefully in a good state. And you've got to think about these things if you're going to go into, if it's such a vital situation and your kids are the biggest deal, you then need to learn how to be, in a sense, professional about it. I tell and we're going to talk about this in a little bit, which is dads. Dads get a short shrift in a lot of this, but part of it's their problem. And it's not necessarily something I blame them for. It's inherent in them, and they're going to have to correct it if they don't want to be part of this family, or they, Andy, maybe I should keep going here, because I think Andy maybe actually gets to it. Maybe I stopped too soon.
Yeah, last I checked too, there's about 20 million single parent homes in the U.S. So, and it's growing. It's getting bigger and bigger.
That sounds like a dramatic underestimate to me, and maybe I'm wrong, but
it probably is. I've got a few notes here that 3.3 million of those, almost 20 million, are with the custodial father. Mm-hmm. So that kind of shows you the imbalance. I know it's not always the case, but that, and state custody laws are different from state to state, and they're changing all the time. So,
all right.
Okay, I don't know. Andy at some point said, "Don't promise crazy a baby." Was basically the. So yes, Andy is right. Don't promise crazy a baby. What men and I'm going to get to this a little bit later. Andy took notes. Yes. Andy, by the way, when he first reached out to me, he said, by the way, I wasn't like, he was trying to hook up. Okay. It wasn't going to happen, but I said, I'll give you some help on the family law. No, he was actually going to go on Josh's show. Jokes on you. I can't read. That's true. That's true. He's going to go on Josh's show. So he threw some things at me and we talked back and forth with him. Andy had done a lot of work, a little bit more than I was interested in, because I was just like, hey dude, mellow out, but this is the way it is. So you've got to be prepared for these kind of things. And I think that is the seminal part that men need to do to prepare themselves going forward in this. You're no longer with this broad. Your idea has just been, I've been supporting this family. I'm taking care of those things. Maybe she's taking care of other things. Get yourself a calendar. When you go into mediation, you're going to have to tell them exactly the schedule. No, I want 50-50. Okay. What does that mean? You're a long haul truck driver. You're not in town half the month. How is that possible? You got to think of things logically. And by the way, the mediators, when they see that you come in and you're prepared and you've got everything dialed in, I get much better results because of that. One, taking ownership, not placing blame, saying, hey, this no 2-bit whore is causing a lot of trouble. Yes, of course she is. She's a 2-bit whore. Okay. We're going to move along from here. This one is talking about CPS. This is pretty much as far as I got for, I watched this once or twice, but this is about as far as I got for specific clips. So what we're going to end up doing is maybe just watching it together.
I'm just saying, like, they usually end up in worse situations when they are removed by CYS, you know, like absolutely horrendous situations that it's like, well, that wouldn't have even happened if they were with the parents. Like,
no. So yeah, you know what? That's actually pretty interesting because you hear about CYS quite a bit, and I don't know what you guys think about this, but I'm sure you've heard people say, oh, well, I'm going to call CYS, or they had CYS called on them. I guess what are some kind of the horror stories that you guys have heard about that? Because I've only heard people just say, hey, we're going to do this, but I've never heard kind of like the tail end, like what happens after that. So either one of you guys, if you guys want to take that kind of detail out, what could potentially happen, maybe what has happened to some people after calling CYS or Protective Services.
Go ahead, Kate.
Okay, well, I can say, like, on TikTok, there's a whole entire...
I like how Andy has to mansplain for Kate to go.
Entire community of people that have been, like, wronged by CPS and CYS, depending, DFS, whatever it's called. And a lot of that, I think, happens because these agencies are, like, they go unchecked, and they're not really answering directly to the state. They're almost like private entities. Like, they branch out into so many different ones. So it's like they all get away with so much, and things aren't double checked by anyone else. But, like, you know, maybe there'll be some silly report and you don't want to answer your door. You don't want to let them in your house. Well, that's just going to escalate because automatically they just assume, oh, you're hiding something, or like, why wouldn't you just let us in the house? It's like,
before we go on here, I think I should make a comment here talked about mediation. What's the point of mediation? Well, the court orders you to go to mediation to try to work out your problems. If the parties come away with a solution, resolution, and it's different with different counties, and they have a resolution, or you guys made an agreement, that's awesome. That's the way you should do it. Me personally, with my ex-wife, 0 days in court, 0. Why? Because she's not a crazy lunatic. She's just not someone who I wanted to be married to. Good mom, and we just resolve issues outside of court all the time. And now my daughter's going to be 18 in November, and then graduating, so we're done. The point is, those are the kind of situations they're great. What does mediation do, though? They come in there. If they don't have that agreement, they then write a report to the court and they give recommendations. That's good. That's an hour's worth of time or so that the parties have been spending together with this person. That court then takes that into account. The judge just adopts this like 90% of the time. It's kind of hard to get over it, but you can request a trial. These are things that you should know, the process of going on in each county in your state. So you know how best you go in there. The mediation report wasn't in your favor. I just had this, I told you about it, a trial. What's the guy do? He didn't have me yet. He said, I want a trial over this. He was at least adept to know that. He hires me for an outrageous amount and we win. That's the solution.
Because I haven't done anything, you know, like there are situations where people have refused to even let them in, and they'll just come back with the police with a warrant, you know, and they'll just take your children right on the spot. Like, the amount of stories, there's so many. My entire inbox on TikTok is nothing but people telling me these horror stories of things that have happened. Like, oh, maybe they smoke weed or have their medical card or something, and like they'll get their children removed for that. But it's okay to be on all these other pharmaceuticals or whatever. Like, you know, there's cases where, I mean, I personally have been involved with children that were in terrible situations, like with abuse and neglect and drug use, and it's like they just got handed right back every time. Like a 2-year-old fell out of a second-story window, like crazy things. A 9-month-old baby that overdosed, and it's like, and I tried like to report CPS before, and that gets you absolutely nowhere. It wasn't on. They didn't come to my house, but this family I had reported on. Like I called the county commissioners. I'm like, dude, children are literally dying in our county because of CPS.
Okay, so we'll stop there on the CPS things, but I thought I'd make some comments. I make the comments all the time. People ask me about CPS. Maybe they're knocking on the door, then they give me a call. I have a number I call. It's an attorney. She's specifically a CPS attorney. She knows the ins and outs. I refer over. Knowing what you're good at is more beneficial than clogging up the system. Okay, so but beyond that, the CPS can save a child's life or they could ruin a family. And I don't know that their stats are better in one way or another, but I think it's all or none. I have a case right now where I have a good client. Kids don't even want to be with mom. She's a POS and they keep, making accusations. CPS comes in. They're not doing anything for him. Now, CPS then spits out 3 types of reports, findings. There's founded, which is, you diddled the kid. Inconclusive. We couldn't tell one way or another. I don't know. Maybe you touched them, maybe you didn't. Or unfounded, which is, no, these accusations, not only could we not say that they were right, they were incorrect. And that then you have to decide whether that was a false report or not. There's all kinds of anonymity for making these reports. So that you got those kind of things. CPS is a danger, and yet they can, if there's really bad situations, they can come in there. I've had them do what I feel is good work, and I've had them do what I think is just preposterous. You do have an appeals process that you have here. So if you're involved with CPS or CYS, whatever they call it, look for an attorney that does specifically those kind of cases. They might be able to help you out. I had one of my first cases I was doing was with the CPS attorney. She called me in to help it because it went beyond that. Dad was accused. I've talked about this with Tower Power Hour because it's a fantastic story. Dad was basically accused of diddling the daughter. No, he wasn't doing that. He was putting mom to sleep with Ambien and then raping her and filming it. I mean, come on, people. This is how we do it. Okay, let's see if anybody else has any other things here. Andy started dropping stats once I closed out the show. Haha. But I think it was good dipping a toe into the show, and I think you complimented it with a deep dive. I appreciate it. We all do our parts. Shannon, that's what he does. It makes it look good with knowledge. Yeah. Okay. You guys are talking back and forth to each other. That's perfectly fine. I'll just hang out here on this video. Has like 3. Should everyone like the video? Okay. Subscribe to Tyler. Hey, but yeah, subscribe to Kyle's. This is part of my door is moving. This is part of what we're doing here is trying to get people subscribing to different podcasts. And one of them we're featuring today is Kyle. I've enjoyed his show. Okay. Let's go here to what I call the final solutions, as Andy had maybe mentioned it. Let's do this here. Sorry, I'm about done here. I think we're going to maybe close out, and then I'll just let it go for... Where is? Okay, let's see what we have going on here.
I guess one thing that I kind of want to hit on is what do you guys think the solution for some of this stuff is? Do you think it's maybe having? I kind of want to highlight some of Trey's comments here because we were also kind of talking about this, but I think this may kind of highlight some of the stuff like a family tax credit. Basically where like on income tax, maybe you got a little bit more money for being married and having children. Is the solution maybe appointing libertarian judges or finding ways to perhaps nullify certain laws that affect the incentives for family court to drag out? What do you see as kind of working the weeds out of this whole thing? Because it's a real sticky mess, and it's not like it's just the state, I think, that seems to be the problem. It seems to be also maybe some private entities that also have issues with this. I guess what are some options you guys see kind of going forward?
Go ahead.
I'll let you take it first, Kate.
There you go. That's
as the system currently is, I don't know if there is a solution with it, like when involving the state. I think the one thing you said about the child tax credit, I think that making it be married people instead of just single, like, because right now it's almost like an incentive to keep the child so that you get that money as a single parent or whatever. So I think that might help. But then, I mean, you just can never guess what people would do. Like, if they'll just go and marry anybody just to go and get it, like, you know, because people are really, I think, just crazy. But I really just think people need to learn to take like personal responsibility for creating this child and really look at it like, okay, we created this life together. Like, I didn't do it alone. You know, you certainly didn't do it alone, and we can't raise it alone. So we need to just like put whatever our personal beef is aside and really just deal with that. And I think if the government wasn't there to like step in and like do all these things for people, that we'd be forced to come to terms with like, you know, making things work out a lot easier than they do using the state to come in and threaten and scare people. Like, because when the threat of jail or, you know, losing your livelihood is what is being like held against you or like used as leverage, like that's causing more tension between the parents. That's not going to make anything easier. It just makes it worse and complicates it more. So I truly think we just need to like abolish the family court system. Like, it's horrible.
Mm-hmm. I'm definitely down with abolishing the family court system.
I like it.
You know, ideally,
Andy wants me homeless.
You know, this would all be privatized, and you know, there would probably still be custodial disputes even if everything was privatized, but you would have more and better options, and their incentive would be to do the best for the parent and the child. Practically, where we are now, I would like to see more states move towards joint custody. If the father is present at the time of birth and wants to be there, there should be, you know, automatic joint custody. You know, I don't think the state can really do that well because they don't do anything well. But as far as like family courts go, I'd like to see them have more accountability as far as just having a jury in some cases and having evidence meet standards of reasonable doubt and things like that instead of just allowing hearsay or conjunction or whatever. I'm not a legalese expert, but there's a lot.
What's conjunction?
That gets allowed in family courts that wouldn't fly in a criminal court or any other type of civil case.
I will say one, kind of correct. We often call it like the wild, wild west in family law, which is just a lot of things go. Now, those are because you have a lot of these, what you might call preliminary hearings, which are just these short cause cases, which you can have hearsay. You can have a declaration from someone who's not there. That's an out of court statement made for the truth asserted. It's hearsay. It's allowed in a short cause, but you request a trial. That's not the case. So I get it, Andy, but maybe this is where everyone needs to know their rights just a little bit more. You know, you watch those videos like auditing the police, you know, people pull over and the guy in the Lamborghini knows a lot more than the police officer. Yeah. If you're involved in these court issues, you got to know what you can do and what you can't. And so what do they say in California about 80 conjunction is, sorry, I got distracted. Conjunction is in my ass or whatever. Yes, it is. Conjunction, that sounds like consumption or something. So you got to know your rights. In California, about 80% of the people that go through family court are considered pro per. In other words, they don't have an attorney, so that everything's like form related. It's helpful there. Look, there's different standards, civil standards. California, it's family law is civil, and so it's the civil standard. It's not beyond. It's beyond a reasonable doubt rather than whatever the criminal. I'm losing my standards here. Whatever it is for criminal. What's criminal? Beyond a reasonable doubt. No, now I'm losing all my standards. This is a pathetic attorney you've got going here. Everyone's got to say you're guilty in trial at court for a criminal. For civil, it's just basically above a 50% believable ability or not. And so it's a different way to go about it. And so once again, you've got hearsay, you've got all these other things. And yes, but once again, maybe you just got to know your rights.
Exactly.
You know what? That's actually good. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Just changing the burden of proof, like you know, like you said, like that's exactly what it is. Because like none of this shit would ever fly in a criminal case. Like they would never be able to like, well, you know, they said so, and you know, just be up to one person. Like I do kind of like the idea of like a jury too, or at least having just like have it be more than just one person. Because like this whole like you're stuck with that judge based on where you live. It's like public school. Like, oh, you live in this zip code, so this is who you got, you know, and they're there until basically they retire. Judges aren't like at least in my small podunk area. And you know, people could maybe say, oh well, you could just vote somebody else in. The judges around here run unopposed every election, and there's like nobody even trying to take that seat from them. So that's like not even an option.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is, you know, some conflicts of interest too with judges in these cases. We kind of hit on a little bit earlier, but you know, I think there are things that could be done practically and realistically to move the needle in the right direction. Obviously, I think we all want it privatized, but I mean, there are things that could be done. And I think this is a huge problem when you're looking at a quarter of the children born in the United States now are born without, are born into single parent homes. And if you look at any of the stats of how those kids turn out from single parent homes, they're more likely to end up overdosing or in prison. And so many other problems come with that. And this just only enlarges the welfare state.
Okay, so I think we're going to I think I've realized what they are. Beyond a reasonable doubt is criminal. Clear and convincing evidence is kind of like your medium standard, and then there's preponderance of the evidence, which is just above 50%. That's the easy one to go. So you're not going to necessarily, I don't necessarily want those changed for civil standards. Judges with tiny hats, I don't know what that means, but it sounds intriguing. Okay, so look, I thought that's kind of my overview of the family law situation. Once again, everyone's situation is different. I hear Josh, Smith talks about some things that sounds horrific. You don't know all the details. And so I don't want to disparage anybody of saying, you're not completely right. But every state's different as well. And sometimes you have clients come in and they tell me something and I'm like, that's bullshit. And then I read everything and I'm like, oh, it's really not. Who knows? JC walks up to a hot girl. Hey, you dropped something. What? Your standards. Hi, I'm JC. Yeah, that's how I got married. Okay. I think that's all we're going to do for today, everybody. Thank you for joining me. What's the real plan here? Tyler, I'm saying to myself, Tyler, I'm going to try to write some things out and maybe start a Substack and work on some of this family law. They talk about it here, and I don't have it here, but Andy says, the Libertarian Party can make huge inroads if they took this on as their issue. And I'm like, okay, well, take it on how to abolish the family law. That's not going to happen. But he's so intriguing on his question, I don't know what the answer is. I think the best I can do is tell you as a person what you should do and understand the processes, be prepared. I think the biggest problem men have is they go to work. Like I said, they go to work, the wife is doing something else, and then they go to court and they're just really not either prepared for it or they haven't anticipated litigation, which you don't do when you're in a relationship, which is screenshot text, use email, don't have conversations over the phone, pay her in a way that's, you can find the transaction rather than in cash. All these things that are necessary so that when you go to court, you can have documents and you can call her out on her bullshit. Men don't do that. And the clients I have that have done that were able to suck back the state, suck back kind of the rulings that have happened. Maybe some of those other things we can do is, push forward for legislation for immediately it's assumed upon separation, you have joint custody, legal and physical. And then you've got the presumption is that, and you've got to show otherwise, maybe some other way. Possibly, I don't know. Proponents of my balls says that. And Shannon says, thank you, Tyler. Yes, everybody. Tomorrow, come back, 4 p.m. Pacific. Let's do the math. 2 more hours. That's Central. That's 6, and then 7 o'clock Eastern time. We are going to have on Brian Williams. We're going to walk through ourselves similar to this, an interview of Gavin Newsom with Adam Carolla back in 2013. Fantastic. Dave Smith responded to a DM. I'm going to plan on having him on. Go harass Dave. I don't know if that works, actually. He did respond to the DM. So I thought I'd go through the Michael Shermer interview on Nick Gillespie's show. Nick is a libertarian slayer, whether he intends to be one or not. People, Dave Smith, we need to suck back the state. Substack is dead, baby. It's just a website. I don't know what it is you're talking about there. All right, that's it. Later.
Okay, I'm leaving now. Bye, guys.
But she's back.
Now.
Chick-fil-A is completely overrated. It's not that good. I prefer Zaxby's. I prefer Popeyes.
Takes a tough man to make a tender forecast, Nick. I guess that's me. Keep fucking that chicken.
Should I vote for Dick Cheney on the Libertarian Party? Do I have an obligation to vote for Dick Cheney?
I would say so.
Yes.
Did it work for those people?
No, it never does. I mean, these people somehow delude themselves into thinking it might, but it might work for us.
That one dude was like, not a podcast. I can't find it anywhere. And they don't have video.
Oh, yeah, Peter Janke. Yeah.
Yeah, I blocked him.
I'll do it. If he unblocks me, I'll...
He'll buy your shirt if you unblock him, Bert.
he's a wigger.
Yeah, nothing cooler than
So
a
he's-
49-year-old wigger.
like-
Yeah,
I
that's
just
all
started
got.
live streaming. Cut me some slack. I'm pretty high tech for a boomer. But
For
anyways,
a boomer.